Hello, sixth graders. We are on Unit 4, and our first lesson today is adding and subtracting fractions. Our learning target is I can add and subtract fractions with like and unlike denominators. So you should have your notebook out, ready to go, or the note template. Make sure you have the title, the unit number. Again, this is part of Unit 4. Adding and subtracting fractions. All right, we have some vocab. Remember, anytime we see this word, that means there's vocab words that we should write down. We should write down all of the words and then the definitions as well. So an improper fraction, this is when the numerator is bigger than the denominator. So I'm just going to give you some examples. 13 over 2, or 10 over 4, 5 over 3. Those are improper fractions. The numerator is bigger than the denominator. The next one, mixed number. This is when we have both a whole number and a fraction with it. So 2 and 1/2, 5 and 1/4. Those are mixed numbers, whole number and a fraction. Like fractions are fractions with the same denominator. So 1/2 and 2/2, or 3/8 and 5/8. They have the same denominator. So then unlike fractions would be with different denominators. Three-fourths, 2/3. Those are unlike fractions. And the least common denominator, this is the smallest common denominator. So the smallest number that the bottoms would have in common. That will come in handy when you're adding fractions to find the least common denominator, because then you have to do less simplifying in the end. Just some quick review, it would not hurt to write down these steps in your notes. The steps to change an improper fraction to a mixed number. Divide the numerator by the denominator, so top by the bottom, write down the whole number, and then the remainder becomes the numerator and the denominator stays the same. We have an example here, 14 over 5, that's an improper fraction. Let's make it to a mixed number. So divide, 14 divided by 5, so 5 goes into 14 two whole times, so that's my whole number. So that would be 5/10, and the remainder, which is 4, becomes the numerator, and the denominator stays the same. Going the other way now, changing a mixed number to an improper fraction. Multiply the denominator by the whole number. Add the answer from step 1 to the numerator, so add the top number, and that becomes your new numerator, top number. Denominator stays the same. So 4 times 2 is 8. 8 plus 3 is 11. That becomes my numerator, and the denominator 4 stays the same. So 2 3/4 is equal to 11/4, and 14/5 is equal to 2 4/5. Okay, so now adding and subtracting fractions. Make sure you have these steps written down in your notebook. Number 1, rewrite the fractions with a common denominator. So find a common bottom number for them. You add and subtract the numerators, but the denominator stays the same, and then write the answer, the sum or the difference, in simplest form. So 1/2 plus 1/6. We need to find a common denominator between 2 and 6. So I'm going to just rewrite them here. I know that they both can multiply into 6, and then we actually wouldn't have to change the 1/6 at all. That would be the least common denominator. So I'm going to multiply this side by 3. Again, whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. So my new fraction over here would be 3 over 6 plus 1/6. That one stays the same. We don't need to change it. Now that we have a common denominator, we can add the numerators. 3 plus 1 is 4. Keep the denominator the same. And then we need to simplify. I know I can divide the top and bottom by 2, and that would become 2/3. So that would be my final answer. Next one, subtract 11/12 minus 3/8. Again, common denominator. We want to find a number that both 12 and 8 can multiply into. I'm just going to rewrite my problem here so I have more space. I know that 8 and 12 both multiply into 24. If you're ever stuck and you can't think of a smaller one, you can always multiply them by the opposite. So I could do 12 times 8 and 8 times 12 to find a common denominator. Your simplifying would just be more work. But I know they both go into 24. So 12 times 2 is 24. Multiply top and bottom by 2. My new fraction would be 22 over 24. 8 times 3 is 24, so multiply top and bottom by 24. 3 times 3 is 9 24ths. Now that I have a common denominator of 24, I can subtract 22 minus 9, which is 13. Keep the denominator the same. We don't subtract those. And I don't think that can be simplified at all, so my final answer, 13 24ths. Let's do some more practice problems together. If you're feeling comfortable, feel free to pause, work ahead, and then check your answers. Otherwise, just keep following along with me. Make sure you have all these examples in your notes. 10 thirds minus 13 fifths. Common denominator would be 15. So I'm going to multiply this side by 5. So my new fraction would be 50 over 15. Multiply this side by 3. So 13 times 3 would be 39 fifteenths. Now that I have a common denominator, I can subtract. So 50 minus 39 would be 11 over 15, and that is already in simplest form. Next one, 4/5 plus 1/3. Always make sure you pay close attention to whatever it is that you're doing, addition or subtraction, so we don't mess that part up. Common denominator, again, is going to be 15, so I'm going to multiply this side by 3. Multiply top and bottom, so my new fraction would be 12 over 15, plus multiply this side by 5. My new fraction would be 5 over 15. So now I can add my numerators together. 12 plus 5 is 17 fifteenths. I've got an improper fraction. The top number is bigger, so I'm going to turn this into a mixed number. 15 goes into 17 one whole time, with 2 left over out of 15. That's in simplest form. So my answer, 1 2 fifteenths. 1/3 plus 1/2. Common denominator for 3 and 2 would be 6. So I'm going to multiply this side by 2 on the top and bottom. My new fraction would be 2 over 6. The other side I'm going to multiply by 3. So that would be 3 over 6. Now that I have a common denominator, add the numerators together. 2 plus 3 is 5. Keep the denominator of 6. 5, 6. And that is already in simplest form. Always make sure to simplify and make a mixed number if you end up with an improper fraction. Next one, 3/4 minus 1/3. Common denominator for them would be 12. So I'm going to multiply this side by 3 on the top and bottom. So that would become 9/12. Multiply this side by 4. And again, I'm subtracting on this one, so my new fraction on this side would be 4/12. Now that I have a common denominator, 9 minus 4 is 5. Keep the denominator the same, and that's already in simplest form, 5/12. Okay, so here you should pause and try these on your own, and then watch through. Make sure you got the right answers. I'm going to go through them here with you. 8/9 minus 2/3. So check your answers, and hopefully we got them correct. If not, make corrections. 8/9 minus 2/3. Common denominator would be 9. So I don't need to change this side at all. Multiply this side by 3. And that would become 6/9. 8/9 minus 6/9 now. So 8 minus 6 is 2. Keep the denominator the same. And that's already in simplest form. 2/9. Next one, 5/6 and 3/8. Common denominator for 6 and 8, 24. And again, if you don't know, you can always multiply them by the opposite. So you could do times 8 and this side times 6, and then for sure you'd end up with a common denominator. But I'm going to do 24. So that means I would multiply this side by 4, which would become 20 24ths. Multiply the other side by 3. Looks like we're subtracting on this one. So 3 times 3 is 9 24ths. Now that I have a common denominator, subtract the numerators. So 20 minus 9 is 11. Keep the denominator the same. And that's in simplest form, 11/24. Last one here, 7/8 plus 3/4. Common denominator would be 8, so I don't need to change that side at all. Multiply this side by 2. Looks like we're adding, so my new fraction would be 6/8. 7 plus 6 would be 13/8. Looks like we have an improper fraction. Let's make it a mixed number. 8 goes into 13 one whole time, which means there would be 5/8 left over. That's already in simplest form. So 1 and 5/8. It's always a good idea to remember to do that estimating. So thinking they're both, like 7/8 is really close to 1, 3/4 closest to 1, so my answer should be semi-close to 2. Okay, so remember to do that estimating to kind of check your answers. Okay, so that's what we have for adding and subtracting fractions. Make sure that you look back over your notes and that you have the title, learning target, vocab words and definitions, all the examples written down with the work to go with them, not just the answers. Check your understanding. Could you explain this to somebody else? If not, rewatch parts that you are stuck on. You can always try more practice problems, and then make sure you have your notes in class. We'll be using them as we complete our work.